Oregon's charter school law, the last substantial reform of Oregon's K-12 education system. 12 years. Many other states in the country have been doing some very, very interesting things. Oregon has not. The governor has called this the transformation session. House Republicans took him at his word, and we brought bills to create more choice, innovation, and accountability in Oregon's K-12 education system. We brought bills to make the evaluation of our schools clear and understandable, to increase participation and success on advanced placement exams, to create achievement incentives, to give parents with children who have disabilities more school choices, to give low-income parents more school choices, and frankly, to give all parents more school choices. We brought bills to make it easier to start new, innovative public schools and equalize the funding for those new schools. We brought bills to give districts more flexibility over their cost structure, including allowing them to hire qualified community members to teach electives. We asked for a discussion. We asked for a negotiation. Frankly, my message was many of these bills are patterned after things that have been successful in other states. If you don't like these bills, look around the country, show us something that you like that's working, that you would like to talk about, and let's have a conversation about that. Time and time again, the answer boiled down to, we just can't get there. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is an education status quo lobby, or what some of my committee members have begun to call the panel of no, who are dedicated to not embracing any of the education reforms that are occurring in other places in the country. They have come forward time and time again when these bills had hearings and given us various reasons for why we couldn't or shouldn't do any of these things. I have boiled them down to a little cheat sheet that I keep with me, and it is too expensive, not necessary, too painful, not for Oregon, too risky, or just plain no, but give us more money. I want to make it very clear that I've been involved in the education reform movement now for nearly 10 years, and I have come to believe that these groups are fundamentally disconnected from their membership. I have talked to countless teachers, principals, superintendents, and parents who want change. Matter of fact, many of the great ideas about reform come from within the system, from people within the system. There are 108 charter schools in Oregon, for instance. Many of them have been started by public school teachers or public school administrators who had an idea and the system would not allow them to execute that idea or to create that school. My message is this. Yes, these bills on the list that you saw, they're going to die tomorrow when we pass a deadline for scheduling them for a work session. Yes, these groups have a great deal of power and money, but pressure is building, and the voices of parents who want fundamental change and who want a system that listens to them, those voices are growing louder and louder every day. Representative Parrish?
Thank you. Yeah, Oregonians, Representative Julie Parrish, House District 37. Oregonians, by fluke or by design, they tied our house. They elected 9 new legislators who made a commitment that cutting days and programs could no longer be the only tools in our toolbox. Oregonians asked us to come to Salem and work together to move the dial forward for the future of our children, the future which they deserve. What Oregonians didn't understand is that that the advocates for the status quo in our classrooms, they come better equipped than we do when we get to the building. They come equipped with a full-time army of lobbyists, paid lobbyists, who attend education committee meetings and say no to cost and outcome reforms. They come equipped with a PAC that adds contributions at a rate right now of $60,000 per month to advocate for the status quo. They come equipped with lobbyists who have been in this building since before I was born, advocating for the status quo. They come equipped with an agenda that serves the adults in the buildings and they don't serve our children. They come equipped with the power and the control to outlast any legislator, any superintendent of education, and any governor. They come equipped with the ability to put the screws into the backs of any legislator whom they supported with the power of an endorsement, and they can crush a candidate who breathes the word of reform. Our children, if they were to pool together their allowances, could not buy a substantial force like the one in this building that advocates for the status quo. They have no lobbyist. Our job as legislators is to be that voice. We are their lobbyist. I put forward a suite of bills that would blur the lines and that would change how we think about schools and education. I asked my colleagues in this building to dream big for our children. And on March 18th, we heard those bills, the ones that would leverage our economic development and our education and marry them together in a way that would ensure Oregonians will always have work. I wear the jobs pin every day, not just for people who need jobs right now, but for the jobs that our kids are going to need tomorrow. This session, in a tied House where everyone is equally accountable, we put forward bills. We built support in our industries, we built support in our communities, we built support with parents for these concepts. And our businesses said yes, and our parents said yes, and our communities said yes. And the status quo lobby and their members of the Education Committee who serve them said no. It's shameful, and it's a tragedy for our children, and it's a tragedy for Oregon's future. And tomorrow all of these great ideas die because the status quo lobby has a stronger voice than our children. That can never happen again. These are the issues that we're facing in this building, and they should not be partisan issues. Because quite frankly, as a mom with 3 kids in elementary school, there's not a whole lot of stuff that I want. I want a road that gets me to soccer practice. I want an education for my children. I want my schools to work. I want somebody in my house to have a job. I want security of being able to have health care for my children, and that milk is on sale at the Albertsons. Okay, those are the things that I want as a parent. Those are not partisan things. I think we all want those things. So I love my kids' teachers. They are rock stars. They are absolutely amazing. I could not begin to do that job. But you know what? Even our kids' teachers don't have a voice. When I get anonymous phone calls from teachers and they have stories and they don't want me to use their name, something's wrong with the system. When I talk to superintendents who say our system is flawed and broken and yet the lines constrain me, something is wrong with the system. They know that there's problems, but the people who are boots on the ground, that voice is truly disconnected with the voice of the people who are doing the job versus the status quo agenda pushing lobby in this building. So when our district made cuts last year, we got 300 moms to a school board meeting and told the school district, sharpen your pencil. Nowhere in the room was the status quo lobby at those school board meetings advocating for our teachers. It was the parents who advocated for the teachers all last summer, and we saved jobs. So I would argue that our bills that we put forward are not about harming the teachers' boots on the ground, but something's got to give, and someone's got to have that voice, and someone has to be that voice for our children. And if it's not the legislators who get to take that oath of office and say that they're going to serve and protect, then I don't know who it is. But we tried, and we're going to come back and we're going to try it again. We have a February session. We're going to try again. We will continue to try and be that voice, and you will see more parents stand up behind us and say, it's time for true change and reform in Oregon, and the status quo does not ever get to have this voice again in this building. And with that, I'll turn it over to one of our parents who'd like to share a few words.
I'm Anne Marie Gurney, and I live in Northeast Portland, and this is my son Ben, who has got the wiggles right now. As a parent who has 2 grade school kids, I don't want my kids to be victims of Oregon's current situation, which is we have a 1/3 dropout rate, and we rank 43rd among 50 states for academic achievement. I have kids that in 10 years need to be ready to enter a workforce, or they need to be college ready. Oregon can't do that for me right now. They can make no promises for that. I don't care what side of the aisle a lawmaker is from. I'm looking for a change maker. I'm looking for parents, a lot of passionate parents. I am looking for amazing teachers, and I know there's many of them out there that want to be part of this change because they are passionate about education, and I want to be part of them. I want to be part of the lawmakers that are making change. I'm tired of the status quo. I have 2 kids that can't put up with it for much longer. Thank you.
With that, we'll take your questions.
So who's the status quo lobby?
Really? So the main 4 education lobby that appears in nearly every education committee meeting is the OEA, the OSEA, the COSA, and the OSBA. But you already knew that.
Representative, regardless of what the lobbyists say and committee, ultimately it's up to the actual members of the committee, the elected lawmakers, to make decisions about moving bills forward.
Right.
Are you saying, are you pointing at, your fellow lawmakers? Are you putting blame on them for holding these up?
It's an 8-member committee. The 4 Republican members of the committee were prepared to vote for these bills, or to enter into a negotiation to talk about how we could adjust the bills so that we could get more yes votes. We remain committed to having that conversation.
Representative Wingard, the tone of some of the comments just made, if not the actual words, sound more like a campaign launch for next year rather than attempt at negotiation. Is that what that tone is intended to convey, or?
Well, Peter, we're here to communicate that we're up against a deadline for this year, and that deadline is going to come tomorrow, and these ideas are going to die. So we will be back next year in the February session, because we're going to be back in every session. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. Matter of fact, Democrats in other states have embraced these types of education reforms. In some cases, they are the leaders on these education reforms. Just because that's not occurring right now in Oregon doesn't mean that things won't change. I guess my message would be that we either need more Republicans in this building or we need different Democrats.
In terms of the conversations, negotiations with the 4 Democrats on the Education Committee, what are you bringing to them? What are you saying we're willing to move on these bills?
So 2 of the bills we were hoping to move, House Bill 3549 specifically, the bill around bringing in folks who are proficient in their field to come and teach. I was walking down that path with one of the members of the committee. And one of the members of the committee said, can you make these kind of changes? And we had that in-district day on March 25th. So that Thursday, I spent Thursday chasing changes to those bills based on the suggestions from one of the members of the committee. And I looked that person square in the face and I said, look, if I'm building trust with you now, I have to assume we're all coming back. And I'm going to build that trust with you. I will not work against you in a campaign, Peter, to your point. I will not work against you in that campaign. I've actually said that to my leadership, and I'm telling it to you now here on the House floor, and my word's my bond. And so please work with me. I know you want to get there. I know you want to make this change happen. Here are these 2 bills. Let's work on them. Let's work on 2 of yours. Let's have 4 bills together that we go roll on the same day and we make some reform happen in this state. And I was told, keep working on them. We're going to, keep working on these amendments. And I chased our legislative council. I was working hard to get that done. And I left on Thursday thinking by Monday we'd be able to get these things scheduled for a work session. And instead on the Monday I get an email that says, not only am I not going to support those bills any longer, the one bill that you put in, the superintendent licensure bill, the one I don't like the most, is the one now that I'll support you on. So something between Thursday and Monday happened to make a change. And that's not acceptable. Between the 3-day window to go from, I'm going to almost be yes with you on these and keep making these amendments, and you can see where we amended them, and we even hand engrossed them so that someone could go through and easily read them and say, what else do we need to change? And that didn't happen. So a complete 180-degree switch from a Thursday to a Monday, something happened. and I don't know what it is, and I still can't account for what it is. And all I know now is that pretty much almost all of these bills come tomorrow or are dead. So, I can document where I tried, and I can document the process. Didn't happen. So, I think there's a willingness. I think there's a willingness after this meeting to sit down. I will clear my calendar the rest of the day today, and whatever it takes tomorrow, and whatever it takes through the night, to find ways to get to yes. But it can't be that we water these bills down so far to nothing that their intent and the spirit of reform is gone. That I can't get to.
Is it your contention that there's nothing substantive nothing what you would consider substantive education reform that's on the table that could potentially be passed? I mean, is that what you're?
Well, I mean, from our angle, this is all still on the table.
Representative Wingard, closer to this.
It's all still on the table for us, but we are against deadlines. Things are going to die. I don't see anything out there that is substantive education reform in the K through 12 system that is coming over from the other chamber, or that people have indicated to us that they want to have a conversation about. I mean, I think you can tell from the list, it's a wide range of conversations that we would like to engage in, and we stand ready. We stand ready to do it today, tomorrow, next month. We are not going anywhere.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, part of I think we see in that over time, sometimes we only get incremental progress towards something, and I'm wondering if you could characterize, do you think that you were asking for too much? I guess I'm wondering if some of these bills that may pass, are they on the way to the incremental, are they getting you there to the reform that may take 1 or 2 or 3 sessions to get?
Well, first, understand, the bill that may pass, the superintendent's bill, that affects 197 people. And that doesn't really affect children. It just says that maybe we can get a better money manager in our schools so that we can start looking at where are we bleeding money in our school system. That's not an outcome reform for children. That hopefully is a cost reform that needs to happen. I can't, Representative Wingard can speak to his
That one's a good bill.
task
The other
force.
one's a good bill, but it's a task force bill, right? So there's absolutely no assurance of work product at the end of the task force, or even that the work product of the task force will be adopted. So it's an agreement to have a conversation for a year.
But look at the other bills that we've actually kind of moved the dial on, if you will. I mean, to let a couple kids in a culinary program be able to have alcohol who are 18 to 21. I mean, is that truly reform on any part of the spectrum, but for a group of kids at cooking school? I would argue it doesn't do anything for the 500-some thousand Oregonians in our K-12 system. I met this morning with the superintendent of one of our school districts, Tiger 12s and school districts. They said at a $5.8 billion funding level, okay, and we did raise the money from the governor's budget to the legislative budget, but at $5.8 billion, it would mean a reduction in equivalent teacher salary and benefits of 83 people. That would mean if we kept the 83 people, we'd lose 22 days, which is the appropriate outcome. So the bills we put forward, the bills I put forward, started to have a conversation about the cost model of education. When I put forward a bill that didn't even get a hearing that said if we have collective bargaining, just put in something that says we just freeze the wages if the governor's in a fiscal emergency. That bill didn't even get a hearing. So we're going to fire teachers so other teachers can get a raise. I love my kids' teachers, but at some point these are public service jobs. And my husband's in the Army, so my version of public service is pretty darn to the core. At some point, it's not just about the money anymore. It's about what are we doing with the money. And you missed the hearing that we had on March 18th, but my testimony was what happens to those kids when they're 18 to 23 and they're out of school. And yes, we get 84% of them out of school according to ODE. 18 to 23-year-olds, there are 80,000 of them on food stamps. There are 5,000 kids who are under 23 in our correction system. I would argue if we had done the right thing for kids in their lifetime, those 18 to 23-year-olds now who are using government services in another part of our budget, that we'd have the money we need for K-12 education. But somehow we got them out the door, even the ones who graduated, and we didn't do the right thing by them, and here we are. So the money's there. We have to use it the right way, and we have to make sure that when our kids graduate, they have somewhere to go so that they're not in our social service system and they're not in our correctional system. So that's what's happening now when you graduate from an Oregon school for 80,000 kids, 18 to 23. That's their story.
I was going to ask the same question as Kim just did, but from the other perspective, in that in 1991, with Republican support, since the House was controlled by Republicans in that session, a major education overhaul was passed, and ultimately it was abandoned. And one of the for various reasons, and one of the reasons it didn't pan out was that there were complaints that there was not enough comment from people actually affected during that session. So, and I have learned over 16 sessions that often major changes don't happen in the section you introduce them in, that they take a while before they are passed. So
Can I
what's different
address
about
that?
this one?
Can I address that?
Christina, go ahead.
I'm Christina Ravalli, just a mom. You're asking thousands of parents and students to continue to wait for reform.
I am not doing that. I'm just pointing out the history of.
What the question is should we try to move the ball a little bit? And clearly what we're seeing is that our legislators are trying to move the ball, and the ball is being stopped. And so there are thousands of children all over this state who are not being served by an education system. And we have legislators who are trying to do that, and they're being stopped, and the lobby of no is telling them to stop. So as a parent who has been down here at the Capitol more than I'd like to be, working with legislators, trying to work with legislators on both sides of the aisle, as parents, we're just saying we want reform. We're saying our children are tired of waiting. We're saying that what is happening right now is not working. So we don't want excuses. We don't want, well, we can't get there right now. We want the conversation. We want both sides to say, look, something's not working. So that's all we're saying. I can't change what happened in 1991. None of us can. We can't change what happened 12 years ago with the charter school laws. None of that can change today. But we can move the conversation. We can move the ball. Parents can be here every day advocating for their kids if that's what it takes. Because I don't have a lobby, and I don't have a lot of money, and I don't have anyone that pays me to come down here to advocate for my son.
Go ahead.
Other committees are making the straight split work. And I was always taught with this kind of deadlock, it takes two to tango. So what responsibility, if any, do you take for the deadlock that's happening right now in the House Education?
Well, I would not agree that there is a deadlock occurring in the House. We have heard dozens of bills. We're going to pass dozens of bills. My point is these bills don't substantially do anything. The conversation that we have repeatedly tried to move forward is a conversation about real, serious, substantial reform to K through 12 education. The bills have been offered. We've had hearings on them. It's just a matter of, I think as someone pointed out, it takes 5 votes to move a bill out of the House Education Committee. We can't get those votes. We have been more than willing to amend the bills. Sit down and talk with us about what we have to do. In one case we were talking about putting a sunset on one of these bills to simply create essentially a pilot program. Let's see if the world comes to an end if we try this for a short period of time. They all just end up as non-starters. So to the extent that there's deadlock, there's simply an inability to get the votes in committee to move substantial reform for K through 12 education.
What do you think of the Governor's Education Investment Board proposal, and what do you see as happening to it if it makes it to your committee?
Well, it may very well pass, but you're not going to hear an argument from me that that is substantial education reform. That's bureaucratic shuffling. You're taking essentially 2 boards and perhaps consolidating them into one and increasing the scope of that board. That may very well turn out to be a good thing. Is it really going to change the situation on the ground in our K through 12 public education system? Well, time will tell. Those are the kinds of things, Peter, I think, that are similar to what was talked about in 1991. They can seem grand in scope, but what they actually do, once they're implemented, I think we've been down that road before. So I really don't know what the fate of those bills are, but whether they pass or whether they fail, I don't believe that amounts to systemic reform of the K through 12 education system.
I'd like to add, I'm completely in favor of having a system that says from preschool to, finishing a bachelor's degree, that people on a board are having a conversation about how does that look and can it be seamless, but we're gonna be right back, even if we do that, in the same conversation of, that's gonna take underlying bills in a subsequent session that now talk about blurring the lines. How do you take a kid who's in 10th grade and bump them into college and make them proficient? Somebody in that conversation, there's gonna be some kind of capital cost, human capital cost that happens as we make those transitions and those budget silos become blurred. There will still be somebody coming behind advocating for no because it doesn't work for their membership to make those changes. I have actually heard that from educators and superintendents who say, this is all great, but unless the underlying laws behind it, that we need to then come around and come up with a plan, somebody's always gonna come to this building and say why that idea won't work. And they've got a lot more clout in some ways than the parents and the people who we're trying to serve and the families. And arguably the 70% of Oregonians with no kids in schools, yeah, they want an outcome too, right? And they almost don't mind how we get these kids out of our schools as long as we get them into being productive citizens and they're not in our social service and our correction system. It doesn't matter at that point what box we put kids in, as long as we are getting them out the door and to where they need to be. You go talk to average citizens and they don't mind what the box looks like. So unless we're gonna do the reform piece that goes underneath that umbrella concept, and people are gonna come here and say yes, when we pass that bill, we say, yes, we pass it, we love this idea, but the 20 bills or 30 bills underneath it, someone's gotta come and say yes to those too. And unless that's gonna happen, then we are just shuffling deck chairs at that point.
So with that, we need to get to the House floor. We appreciate you all being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.